morning. Hi, everyone. Great to be with you. And as you've heard, this is Bayside Community Care Weekend, which I have the absolute privilege just to share a short message with you. And I'm also then going to give you a little bit of an update on our major programs, which you sort of heard a little bit of an overview in that video, but we're going to dive a little deeper by talking to some people who are involved. But I can't believe it. We're in May. Can you believe it? Yep. In the 5th month of the year. I just feel like this year is racing by. I had a really big April month. I'm not sure if you did too. I mean, we had Easter and Anzac Day backed up against each other, which was lovely. I hope some of you got to manage to go away and enjoy a bit of a break. The office staff had some days off here, which was really great. But personally, April was a big month for me too, because in our family, we got to celebrate a 70th, a first birthday, and then I've entered the 5th decade. Yay! Kerry said to me this morning, that means you get to celebrate your birthday for 5 weeks. And apparently when you turn 60, it's 6 weeks. Is that right, Kerry? So Lara, beware, we're celebrating my birthday for 5 weeks. We'll be over it well and truly. But I guess as I've turned this big number in my mind, I said this early in the year, you do a lot of reflection on, your earlier years and what you hope to achieve in your life. And in actual fact, that was one of the discussions around the birthday table. I was talking to some of my nieces and nephews, and we were talking about, the ambitions that we had when we were young, and then, of course, how that's turned out, like what successes we've made in life. And it got me thinking, because culture has a particular way at looking at success and even measuring it. When we say someone, like he or she has made it, we usually say that in terms of they've reached maybe a financial success or perhaps a career. So this morning I want you to take one moment and reflect. How do you define and measure success? And then I want you to turn to the person next to you and just share. We're not going to take too long on it. Just think what comes to mind first and foremost. And Pastor Rob, maybe turn behind you. So let's just take a moment. Have a think and share with the person next to you. How do you define and measure success? I'll just give you one more minute. Okay, we're going to wrap it up there. It was a quick minute. I would love to hear from you, just 3 people. I'm going to just pull out people from different generations. I'm going to start with, say, Gen Z. Lift up your hands. Anyone here who's a Gen Z? Yes, I see Kai, and I see, look at some people going, Kai, would you be willing to share how you define and measure success? And we have a microphone. Oh, you're on the sound desk, so of course you have a microphone. Go for it.
I'm all the way back here in the corner.
That's all right. Let us know.
How I define and measure success would be that you're happy and satisfied with life, and that you feel like you've succeeded enough, and that you have just a happy life. Really, that's how I think it would be.
Happy life. Okay, so
Yeah.
if you're happy, you're defining that as successful. Wonderful. I'm going to go now with a millennial. Who's a millennial? Who's bold enough just to share their view on it? Come on, any raised hands? Joel, you're nodding your head. You're a millennial. Oh, yeah, I think you're a millennial.
I feel like I'm on the cusp because I'm like early 80s. Anyway, so we were discussing, and I think for me, like Emma was saying, that it's not really linear. It's like sometimes it's goals achieved, but I think most of the time it's like when you're feeling like you're being faithful to God and you're seeing God be faithful to you, whatever that looks like. So sometimes, you can see that straight away. Sometimes you have to wait a while.
Yeah.
For me, my feelings of success are like, how much am I not letting things get in the way of my relationship with God? I would say that's my success.
Wow, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, the last person, a boomer. Who are that now? There's a lot of you in here. Nah. Pete.
When what you're doing is going well according to the Lord, and the end result, when achieved, is what you are aiming for, also according to the Lord.
I love it. So good. I love being in the house of God, and you get answers like all three of those. Thank you so much. But you know what? The world defines success and measures it quite differently. And particularly through advertising and media, social media and pop culture, we see a very different definition of success that gets promoted. And usually it's visible, it's external, and it's measurable. And there seems to be this sort of dominant narrative around how the world defines success. And there's sort of 5 key themes that I want to just share with you what those themes are. And I'm sure we all know them because we're not, we are part of the world that we live in. The first is wealth and material possessions. And that is about having, perhaps a big house, a fancy car, designer clothes, luxury holidays. It's more that sort of motto, the more you have, the more successful you're seen to be. The second narrative that seems to float around is career status and power. And that's got a lot to do with having a high-ranking job title, perhaps being a CEO, an entrepreneur, or an influencer. The sort of motto is, you grind now and you shine later. The third area is fame and recognition. And that's a lot to do with social media followers, having influence through TV, sports, or achievements. It's very much about being seen and celebrated, and that's seen as an ultimate validation. The fourth area is beauty and youth. Success often gets tied to looking a certain way or staying youthful. And that's thanks to filters, cosmetic industries, and an image-driven culture. And finally, the fifth area, which I find quite interesting, is romantic relationships. Sort of this idolised perfect relationship or family life is marketed as something you need to have to arrive at. It's interesting, all those 5 areas, because I think in and of themselves are not necessarily bad. It's only if they really kind of grip your heart and motive. The twist here is, though, that a lot of those areas that I have mentioned can feel pretty shallow, unsustainable, and anxiously performative for many people, because a lot of it has to do with doing and having rather than being. It's like the world's definition of success is loud, flashy, and always sort of moving the goalposts. And I guess if you're not careful, it can make you feel like you're not quite enough, really. So how does Jesus look at it? How does he define success? In the story of the Last Judgment in Matthew 25, Jesus reminds us that one of the fundamental ways that we can measure our lives will not be how much money we have in the bank, nor the position and influence we will have, but rather how we cared for the people in need. Jesus goes so far as to say that when we care for others, we're ministering to him. Verse 35 of that Matthew chapter 25, it says, "For I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. I was naked and you clothed me. I was sick and you visited me. I was in prison and you came to me. We see all the way through the Bible this call from God to always look out for the poor and the marginalised. In Isaiah 58, he even corrects the people of the day, the Israelites, because they went so far as being so concerned about their religious rituals such as fasting, but neglecting what really mattered to him. In verses 6 to 8, it says, "Is this not the kind of fasting I have chosen? To loose the chains of injustice and untie the cords of the yoke, to set the oppressed free and break every yoke? Is it not to share your food with the hungry and to provide the poor wanderer with shelter? When you see the naked, to clothe them and not to turn away from your own flesh and blood." This sounds so familiar to Jesus' words that I have just read before. It's almost identical. This caring for the poor, welcoming the stranger, feeding the hungry, this matters to God. And God wants us to get this picture that his definition of living a successful life has very little to do with how the world measures it, but everything to do with how we care for others. So I want to ask the question this morning, does that reflect your life? Last week, Pastor Mark Connor shared a very timely and profound message on sacrificial love. And he asked everyone here how you would like to be treated. And we all responded with various responses like, I want to be treated kindly, generously, selflessly, compassionately. There was all these beautiful words. Now, I want to extend that question this morning and ask you, how would you want to be treated if you were in prison? If you were poor and hungry? If you were in a new environment? If you're feeling marginalised, how would you want to be treated? You know, I hope that our responses would be the same. Kindly, compassionately, selflessly. All the words and adjectives that we shared last week. The royal law that Pastor Mark Connor referred to, and we talk about often, Pastor Rob talks about the royal law often, reminds us that we are to treat others as we would want to be treated. And sometimes I think that means we have to imagine if we're in those situations. You know, I find it quite telling how people talk of someone once they've passed on. We don't usually hear when we go to a funeral all the possessions that someone has. What we do get to hear is perhaps the things they've achieved in their life and the person that they are, the person that they have become. In the last week, the world has mourned and celebrated Pope Francis's death. And one of the descriptions that seem to reverberate loud and clear is that he was called the people's Pope. And he was called this because of his care for the people on the margins, particularly the poor, the foreigner, and those who faced inequality. You know, over 200,000 people packed St. Peter's Square to give their last respects. And it was like a who's who of the world leaders that were in attendance. But one of the things that absolutely gripped me as I was reading about this is that Pope Francis wanted to be accompanied to his final resting place at the Basilica of St. Mary Major by a group of poor and marginalised people that included the homeless, prisoners, migrants, and transgender individuals. He wanted to give those that society considered the least, the most prominent position of that day, so they would not be forgotten. I tell you, that spoke to me loud and clear. One of his most famous quotes was this: "The world tells us to seek success, power, and money. God tells us to seek humility, service, and love." Pope Francis sought to live a life of humility, service, and love, and he lived to seek to live up to the name that he took on as Pope, which is Francis, after Saint Francis, who was known as the saint who looked after the poor. I believe this message is one we need constant reminding of. Because we live in a society where I talk about those 5 themes that seem to weave in our world of how we measure success. We need to constantly go against the grain. And I am very conscious in my own life that I have to push against that spirit of this age, which is always about having more and better and often focusing on self. And then don't get me wrong, there is a place for looking after self, but not at the cost when we don't consider those who are on the margins. I seek to live a more simple life where I can to ensure that others can flourish, and that's my hope. And that's why being engaged in Bayside community care reminds me why this is so important and what is important. Because what we do for the poor as a church is not some extracurricular activity, it's the gospel. And I'm privileged, alongside many others who volunteer, to see the face of Jesus in the people that we minister to. Today I'm going to interview a couple of people who are involved in our programs, who are going to share about how our programs have impact in the community. Many of you may not have the time to volunteer, but I want to encourage all of us as we go about our everyday life to ask God to grant us the eyes to notice how we can bring love to those who are in need, and to keep reminding us what living a successful life really needs to look like. Now I'd like to invite Glenford Noble and Emma Day to the platform. Thank you. Yeah, let's give them a round of applause. Thank you for coming in, and particularly Emma. We had another volunteer who was going to share with us this morning, but unfortunately she's unwell, so Emma's stepped in for us. Emma's involved in some of our community care projects, and as well Glenford Noble is too. So to begin, between both of you actually, you're involved in Matt's Place Food Rescue and our food relief hampers, which happen every week. So just as a little way of introducing yourselves, perhaps we'll start with Glenford. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and why and the areas that you choose to volunteer in?
Yeah, okay. So I'm Glenford. I've been involved in the church for about almost 10 years now, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. And about 2017, I did my first Sleep at the G, because I was really had a heart for those people who were just living on the streets and doing it really tough. And after doing that, I then heard about Matt's Place. And I think at the time, Amy was running Bayside Community Care and Danielle was running Matt's Place. So I started doing the Thursday morning at Matt's Place, first just serving food, and then they asked me if I'd like to go at the front door, because I think I was the only bloke there at the time, and I needed someone big at the front door, just in case there was any trouble, you know. So I found myself at the front door, and I've been there ever since. And I like to call myself, like to say that I'm the maitre d' of Matt's Place.
Delightful. Thank you, Glenford.
Yeah.
Pass it to Emma. Emma, you're on staff, and we heard that you have a really long title here, which I won't go into right now. But you get pulled into, well, actually, part of your role in events, can you tell us a little bit about what you do and how you get involved in community care?
Yeah, sure. So part of my role is to organise events, so things like the trivia night, which we're going to plug a little later. That's part of my role I've got the privilege of organising that. It's so much fun. That's part of it. But then on a Wednesday, we have a smaller team of staff that are here, and so we often work downstairs. And so part of my job on a Wednesday, and as well as everybody else that works on a Wednesday pretty much, is to receive people as they come in for hampers and stuff like that. And sometimes on a Tuesday and Thursday, I'll jump onto reception if Tony's not here or we don't have a volunteer. So I get to kind of see a good overview of what we do in community care. So it's a privilege to be a part of.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. So, Glenford, you came and spoke last year to our church, and I wanted to invite you back because I particularly want to know what's changed in the last year. What have you noticed, particularly as maitre d' of Matt's place?
Over the last year, I'd say we're getting a lot more women over 50 attending Matt's place, which has been quite significant. Also, a lot more Chinese people are attending, and what they do is they'll come, first of all, maybe 2 or 3 of them, then they'll bring their friends, then their friends will bring their friends. So it's been quite significant, those 2 areas.
Have you noticed any particular sort of ethnic groups that you mentioned Chinese? Any other groups?
We
that
have a lot of Russian people as well, and they're also growing in numbers, and they bring their friends. But we have a sort of probably a core group of maybe, I'd say 60 or 80 people every Thursday who turn up. But then we're getting more Chinese people, more Russian people, and I'd say every week we get maybe 2 or 3 newcomers as well. So it's growing, yeah.
So you're also involved, not only in Matt's place, but he's also involved in food rescue. And last year we rescued 13,500 kilos of food, which is a huge amount of food, that gets turned into meals at Matt's place or given out as part of our pantry. So you get to see quite a bit of the 2 programs.
Yes, I see the sort of the complete circle. Because I've been working in Matt's place for years, and then in the last few months or so, I've started doing food rescue on a Monday. And it's fascinating because we go to Aldi in Cheltenham and also one in Bay Road, and we collect masses of food. There's usually 2 or 3 of us, bring it back to Bayside, and then try and pack it in the fridges as best as possible. But then on the Thursday, that food is used to make meals for Matt's place and also for Chelsea as well. So that gives me a real insight into the whole process.
Yeah, wonderful. So what's it like for you to be that first person that people see and greet? That particular role for you?
Oh, look, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Any characters?
Over the years, I've basically known just about everyone by their first name. So it's a real sort of family sort of experience, and I think it's really important that I can remember people's first names, because for a lot of these people they live very anonymous and lonely lives, and for someone to say, "Oh, how you going?" You know, Sally or Bob or Joe, I think it really resonates with them. It gives them a sense of, oh, you know, someone's actually taken the trouble to know who I am. And I'm reminded of, I think it's Isaiah 43, where it says, and I shall know you by your name.
Yeah.
So that's a really, for me, it's very heartwarming to be able to do that every Thursday. And I just love it very much.
That just reminds me, just a small story about the importance of names. An elderly gentleman used to come to Matt's place, and he was a very reserved man, didn't talk to anybody, and then he went to an op shop, met another lady called Margaret, and somehow encouraged her to come to Matt's place. So you would know Neville and Margaret.
Yep.
And Neville ended up not being so well, and Margaret tried to contact him, wasn't picking up, and she sort of raised a bit of a flag with us at Matt's place. So we did a bit of a ring around and, rang the police to go and do a welfare check, and he ended up being in hospital. He came out, but a month later, or a couple of months later I should say, the same thing happened. This time Margaret went to the hospital herself, and he was dying, and she was able to be with him. He had no family, no support. He would otherwise have died alone, but because of the friendships that he formed at Matt's place, he managed to pass from this world with a friend.
Yeah, beautiful.
Isn't that beautiful? Yeah. My final question for you, Glenford, can you share a moment that really stuck with you in the past year?
Yes. So I've been thinking about this one quite a bit, because there have been a few. But I like to dance, and when I'm at Matt's place, I normally find a dance partner to do a little waltz with. And everyone loves it.
Maybe not everyone, but we know the ones that do.
But in the last few months, there's a young woman who comes in who's in a wheelchair, and she can't talk, but she's got a wonderful laugh. I started dancing with her support worker, and she loved it. She was laughing with embarrassment and fun that I was dancing with her support worker, and she loves Elvis, so we put on an Elvis song. So I did this for a few weeks, and then her support worker said, "Why don't you dance with her?" So I sort of said, "Would you like a dance?" And she said, "No, no, no, no." I said, come on. So I took her hand, and we started dancing together with her in her motorised wheelchair. And she really liked it. And it was just a lovely feeling of, I mean, obviously we couldn't communicate. We couldn't communicate, but something just passed between us. Just a real sense of, I know.
She's being wooed by Glenford.
Connection. It was a connection. It was a connection which I felt was a really spiritual connection.
Yeah.
And that has stuck with me for many, many months. And hopefully when I go back to Matt's place, we'll have another dance together and we'll just build on that lovely relationship.
And that's just so beautiful, because what you've done is actually seen her. And so many people just want to be seen. We forget just the simple things of seeing someone, noticing them, knowing their name, saying their name, makes a huge impact. I love that story. I did have actually one more question, sorry.
Sure.
What have you noticed about how important that role is for you at the front door, particularly as people come in, and particularly for people who, might be homeless, might be, a bit scared coming in? What have you noticed?
So, as I say, most of the people who come are regulars, but we do get people who are coming for the first time, and they are quite scared and confused, and they're obviously in need. That's why they're there. And so it's really my job is really just to calm them down, to reassure them, and to say, look, we're having a banquet here, and you're welcome. And I often feel like I'm like a St. Peter at Heaven's Gate. Everyone, and I'm saying, come on in. Yeah, there's free food here. You're absolutely welcome. And that gives them, it reassures them. And then they can just sort of, all right, come in, and so I feel that's what my job is very much for the newcomer.
Sounds very like Jesus. Come on in, doesn't it? Fill the banquet table. Anyone who wants to come in. Love it. Thank you, Glenford. I'll just ask you to pass the mic to Emma. So Emma, because you have sort of you step into that frontline role at reception where people come in from the community, I want you to just give us a little bit of an overview. What's that like, being at that front desk? Receiving people perhaps who you don't know, or I know there are regulars.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what that role requires of you.
So I guess one of the important things that I see when people come in is their vulnerability. And so being aware, as for myself, being aware that people don't come to get a hamper unless they need a hamper. And that can often be a really, it's a confronting thing for them, because nobody likes to feel like they're in need and need help, right? So for me, it's important that I greet people with open arms. Like Glenford was saying, it's that smile when you greet them, it's that welcome, it's knowing their names. One of the things that I have really loved is getting to know the regulars that come in and being able to say, hi, Sally or George or whoever it is, and you see them light up with recognition that we know them, we care about them. Yeah, and I guess assessing need as well. So we get people that come in from all different places. There's homeless people that come in for hampers, and actually taking time to know whether or not they have cooking facilities. So just asking, do you need a hamper that you can just eat from, or do you have cooking facilities that you can prepare a meal? Because there's no point giving somebody stuff that they have to prepare, because they're not going to say, oh, I don't need that. But asking the question actually opens the door for them to talk about stuff,
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I know the hard data, so to speak. We gave out nearly 1,200 hampers last year, which I think from the year before was only around 800. So it's a huge spike.
Massive. Yeah.
And we've already seen in the first quarter of this year a 26% increase in our food hampers. So there is a lot of need in our community. What have you seen in terms of, apart from let's put facts aside, what is the changes that you see in people's need?
Yeah. We're actually seeing more people come in who perhaps, for instance, there's a guy that recently contacted us. He'd lost his job. He has a home, has a car, but he'd lost his job. And when you lose the main income of your family of 5, it's very challenging to actually feed them. And so we're seeing more people come in who are in situations that are unexpected. We have seen more younger people actually calling to say, I need help, which is interesting because I guess we think about our society and think, there's not really young people, but there are. There are people doing it tough in all demographics, and we're seeing them come through the doors because they're actually realising that there are avenues for help, which is, it's humbling for us and for me on the desk, but it's also such a privilege to be able to provide care. And I'm not filling the cupboards. I mean, I bring stuff in to support our hampers, but I'm not doing it alone. It's through support of all of us that I actually feel like I get the benefit of, because I see how people receive that assistance. So it's increased, definitely. We've also seen people coming in who are seeking connection. Community is really important, and the people that come in frequently, when you know their name, there's no shame attached to that, which I think for us is really important. There's no shame. What do you need? Let me help. If we've got it, we'll give it to you.
Wonderful.
So, yeah.
Any stories that stand out for you?
Look, there's plenty. There's a lot of people that come in regularly and they'll hang around for a chat. We've got a lovely lady on a Wednesday who has been coming here for 10 or more years, and she's a Muslim lady, Turkish, comes in and she bakes for us fresh food, cooks for us every week, comes in, even through Ramadan, she'll make us food. And she comes in not so much to take a hamper nowadays, she'll take bits and pieces, but she comes in for community. She comes in to have a chat and a laugh. And it's the highlight of my Wednesdays, if I'm honest. I miss her when we're not here. Yeah.
She's vibrant.
She is.
And it's wonderful because it's not just about sort of a transaction per se.
right.
I have a need of food, I give it to you, see you later.
That's
it is
right.
about forming community. And that's what I love, I guess, about both of these programs. It's not just about the food aspect, it's creating community, a place
right.
where people feel safe, a place where people are known and can be
Yeah.
part of the fabric of
Yeah.
this community, which is essential. Have you noticed, and I guess this was my last question, but you might have already answered, have you noticed over time when someone comes in, they're feeling vulnerable, that then shifting to connection and community? Like, do you see that shift?
There's actually a couple that come in, and they've been coming in for quite some time. Probably, I mean, I've worked at Bayside since 2021, and I have seen them coming since I started working. So I'm sure that I don't know if they were actually coming prior to when I started, but they're a beautiful couple. Funny, poor Carlos, every time this gentleman comes in, he goes, "Have you found your car?" Because Carlos, his car's lost. Oh. He's a lovely. They're lovely, so lovely. But the beautiful thing about it is that, they come in every fortnight. They'll come in and they see the posters of advertised things that are happening at the church. They've been to the last 3 carols that we've had. Every year they're coming to carols, which is amazing. And then, our job in community care isn't to bring people into the church, but it's a product of it because they're loved. Knowing people's names, I think it's so rewarding to know that community care, and by extension Bayside Church, is a place where people know that we care. Which for me, what greater task could we have than to love our community and love people as they come in? It's such a privilege.
Matthew 25.
Yeah, there's no greater privilege, I think. And and I think that seeing people come in, for all of us who work in that space, it's such it's a reward. Okay. Yeah.
Wonderful. Glenford, last question for you.
Yep.
What would you say to anyone who's considering being involved in either volunteering or getting behind our projects?
I'd say...
How has it changed you, and how would you encourage them?
Well, I think it's made me a much more, compassionate person and more other-centred. And I think what I've found about my experiencing in Matt's place is that people confide in me. They start telling me their stories. There's one guy in particular who he's trying to give up smoking. And so every week he'll come in and say, "Oh, I haven't smoked for 14 days now." I said, "That's great. Keep it up, keep it up, keep it up." So it's those little things like that which really somehow just enrich me. So I would really encourage people, if you've got the time, to just do some sort of volunteer work, either through Bayside Community Care or maybe an organisation which is near to you. It could be the Salvos, it could be Sacred Heart Mission, it could be anything where you're, I think, just putting something back into the community, because that's my purpose. I think in life, as you said, it's not about fame, success, glory, and all that, which I know a little bit about because I work in TV and film. But the most important thing for me is being able to serve others to the best of my ability. We can't all, do everything, but one can do a little bit, and I think that's all that we're asked to do. So I think that's it.
Thank you. And then one final question for you. How can our congregation get behind our food relief?
Bring food, non-perishable items. We, like you said, have the increase in demand has been huge, and it's really lovely to be able to say, "Do you need any toiletries?" And there's toiletries there to give. So bring, in terms of supporting, do a food drive at your work. Collect food from your workplace, because workplaces are always looking to support community spaces.
And that's really great, because one of the things that's seeming to happen now is that school communities are turning to us, looking for food hampers to give to people in their community. And so we're looking as being that resource for the community. So it's not just about who arrives at the door, so that ongoing need, even just one item
Yeah.
Just adding one additional, item into your basket as you do your shop helps.
And I would say also prayer. Our people, the teams, the frontline teams, you guys,
Yeah.
pray for them, pray for us as we minister to our community.
Great.
That's why we're here.
Thank you. Thank you, Glenford, and thank you, Emma.
Thank you, Sandra.
Yeah. Wonderful. I want to share now just a little brief update on our program Acres of Love, which is our Bayside Forever home. Now, if you're fairly new to Bayside Church and don't know much about that, in 2007, we as a church community purchased a home in South Africa that's now it's called a Bayside Forever home. And that home has the ability to house children who have been orphaned or abandoned. And we've seen since 2007 a whole generation of young boys, because it was first a boys' home, being raised and now launched out of the house because they're in their young adult years, and a lot of them have either gone on to study or gone on to work or apprenticeships, which is absolutely fabulous. It's a model that works. There are over 40 forever homes in South Africa, and that's thanks to churches like us who have sown the seed of actually purchasing a home and ensuring that children can be cared for. So now our home has 5 beautiful girls. One of our girls has been adopted out. And I just wanted to give you a little bit of update on our girls. So it's good for you to be able to know who they are and pray for them. So up on the screen, we're going to see some photos. The first one is Balala. She's 3 and is busy in speech and play therapy at Montessori Preschool. She's smart and loves to ask what the plan is for the day. She sounds like me. She loves to plan already at 3. She's probably a 3 on the Enneagram. Yep. She's social and loves to snuggle with her mum and her sisters. And I forgot to mention, sorry, these photos won't be shown online for their privacy reasons. The next little girl is Lakisa, and she's also 3 and is bright and surprises her family all the time with her wit. She likes to explore and help her mummy cook. She loves to taste every dish as it's being made. That sounds like a good trait to have. And she loves attending preschool with her sister Balala. Next is Imbali, who's 2 and loves her independence. She loves to do things on her own and always wants to eat adventurous foods. She should try Vegemite. She loves playing with others and is excited when leaving the house for outings. Next is Amahe, and she's 2 and is a fun toddler. She's very busy and always seems to be in a good mood. She's sad if someone else is crying and loves to comfort them. Don't you love how their personalities start to shine through? She loves people and being with others. And then finally, we have Lundanali, the youngest of the girls at 7 months, loves one-on-one time with her mum. She's starting to crawl and wants to keep up with her sisters. Her laugh is so precious. She has so much energy. So that's our 5 little girls. Aren't they gorgeous? And so please be praying for them as they grow. The house has house parents that care for them, that tend to all their needs so they can thrive and have the future that we want every child to have. Our final bit today, and I've seen that I've gone over time, is really just to encourage you how to get involved. Emma mentioned prayer. Please pray. Please pray for every aspect of the Bayside Community Care Ministry. We really need your prayers. If you can help give, just the simple cost of one coffee, if you could afford the cost of a coffee and donate it to Bayside Community Care. And if you imagined that 100 people did that every week, we would be raising close to $16,000 for our projects, which is just enormous. Even if you could afford the cost of one coffee a month, it would make a huge difference. We have a winter warmer campaign coming up, and that's some information at the back on the Bayside Community Care table. We're looking for beanies, scarves, warm items, socks that we can give out to people in need. And Emma mentioned the Trivia Night fundraiser. Book a seat. That's coming up in August. And if you have things that you can donate that can be part of our auction of prizes, please talk to Emma.